Daughter brought home an older man claiming they're deeply in love. I refused him entry and now she's threatening to leave. My name is Sarah and I'm 48. My husband, Mike, is 46, and we have a 20-year-old daughter named Ellie who's currently home on vacation from college. Let me just start by saying, Ellie and I have always been close. She's usually an open book, quick to tell me everything about her life. So, when, about 5 months ago, she mentioned out of the blue that she had a boyfriend, a guy she called Tom, I was happy for her but, truthfully, a little surprised she hadn't brought it up sooner. It wasn't just the suddenness of it. What felt strange was how secretive Ellie became. Usually, she'd fill me in on every detail, what her friends were up to, group projects, who she's texting, even little dramas that didn't matter. This time? She wouldn't show me a single picture, and apart from saying they met at a party through a mutual friend, she shared next to nothing about Tom. Both Mike and I were supportive and figured she'd open up eventually. Ellie spent the past month in her college town, and the plan was that she'd come back home for the weekend. A few days before her return, she asked if she could bring Tom along because they were getting serious. She said she wanted us to meet him, and that we'd love him. We pointed out that we didn't really know anything about the guy, but she just smiled, saying it would be a surprise. Since he seemed important to her, I said of course. Mike and I were both interested to finally meet this mystery man. Yesterday morning, we went to pick Ellie and Tom up from the airport. The moment I saw Tom, I just froze. He wasn't just not a college student, he looked much, much older. I could barely piece together my thoughts, but I did my best to keep a straight face and signaled to Mike to do the same. The car ride home was heavy, an obvious tension in the cramped silence. Even Ellie mentioned how frosty it felt. Once home, Mike couldn't hold back any longer. He outright asked Tom how old he was. Tom looked us straight in the eye and said he was 44. I felt bile rise up in my throat. He's just 2 years younger than Mike, old enough to be Ellie's father. It was a shockwave, rolling through me, impossible to hide. Mike started peppering Tom with questions about how they met, how things started. Ellie jumped in, telling us again that it was at a party. Tom was apparently well known around town, and they'd hit it off because they shared a lot in common. I genuinely couldn't listen anymore. The whole thing made my skin crawl. Mike, whose patience had clearly snapped, told Tom to leave. Ellie's face flushed red, anger, humiliation, heartbreak. She shouted at us, accusing us of being unfair, that Tom made her happy, that we hadn't even given him a chance. Tom, reading the room, quickly left, and Ellie, seething, stormed out after him. I texted Ellie, reaching for anything to bring her back, told her I wanted us to talk about this, just us. She asked if Tom could come too. I told her honestly, he wasn't welcome. Her reply cut me, "You're a judgmental a-hole." She let me know she wasn't coming back, that she and Tom were staying at a hotel instead and would spend time catching up with her friends. Now I just feel brokenhearted and lost. I can't stand the idea of losing Ellie over this, and all I want is for her to be safe. But Mike won't budge. He said it would take a lot to hold him back if he ever sees Tom again. I wish I knew what to do to fix any of this. Update 1. The sheer flood of emotion and thoughts I experienced after everything that happened was almost more than I could bear. I never imagined my situation would stir up such strong, divided opinions, but at the end of the day, I was grateful to have my perspective challenged, even if it made things more difficult to process. As much as I wanted to reach out and answer questions, there was simply too much on my mind. I needed time to process everything myself. Now, at least, I want to offer an honest account of what's taken place, especially for those who might relate. A little background, in case you haven't heard it all. I am a mother, my daughter Ellie is 20, and just 5 months ago, she started dating Tom, a man of 44. When Ellie announced she would be bringing Tom home to meet us, my husband and I could not accept it. We told Tom he wasn't welcome at our house. After that, Ellie and Tom found a hotel nearby, and the weight of that decision has crushed me in ways I'm still struggling to understand. This past Sunday was probably one of the lowest points I've felt in years. I missed Ellie so much, and not seeing her hurt in a way that left me anxious and deeply sad. I talked it over with my husband, admitting I just wanted to be near her again. I realized it couldn't happen without seeing Tom as well, so I suggested we meet at a neutral location for brunch. My husband wasn't ready for that. He said he just couldn't handle it emotionally, so we decided I would go on my own. On the drive over, my nerves nearly overtook me, but all those anxious feelings melted away the moment I saw Ellie. Relief, warmth, just to know she was okay. Being with her helped more than I expected. Tom was there too, and though I tried to remain open-minded, every instinct in me was on high alert. I couldn't pass up the chance to figure him out a bit more, so I made an effort to stay polite while I probed for details about who he really was and what he wanted from my daughter. When I pressed him about being known around a college town and why he'd crossed paths with Ellie in the first place, he explained that he attended the same college at her age, fell in love with the town, and simply never left. He admitted he still frequented all the same campus bars and hangouts, staying connected to the college community. I tried to keep my composure, but I couldn't shake how unsettling I found that. What else did I learn? Tom's never married, no children. He said he works as a software engineer and spends his spare time cooking and practicing meditation. Despite the normalcy of his answers, something ran just beneath the surface, a discomfort, or maybe my own bias clouding things. Ellie carried most of the conversation, determined to convince me they were a good match. She said they enjoyed the same spots around town and campus, claimed their mutual love for sushi was uncanny, and told me he was the most mature, understanding person she'd ever met. Tom chimed in to say Ellie was perfect and that he was serious about their relationship. I couldn't let it go. I asked Tom, delicately at first, if Ellie was the first younger woman he dated. Ellie bristled at the question, but Tom said relationships in general weren't really his thing, and something about Ellie had uniquely drawn him in. After about 2 hours, we wrapped up brunch. Ellie said how much she appreciated me showing interest in Tom, and asked if they could both come over for dinner sometime. I told her that sounded fine, but warned I'd need to talk to her dad about it. Tom shook my hand. That was it. Now, my husband is still resistant, and I understand his position, but I'm starting to believe it's necessary to keep communication open if we want to hold on to a relationship with Ellie, even if that means letting Tom in the door. Still, nothing about Tom's presence has changed my gut feeling. Something is just off. If anything, some of his answers over brunch left me more convinced that he isn't the right person for Ellie. As much as I want to keep her close, I can't silence the unease in my heart. Update 2. A lot has happened in just the past week, and it has shaken my world to the core. For some context, I'm a mother whose 20-year-old daughter, Ellie, recently brought home her boyfriend, Tom, from college for the very first time. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. Tom turned out to be 44. The revelation left both my husband and me utterly shocked. Still, I knew that above all, I didn't want to lose Ellie. I met Tom for brunch, just the three of us, no husband, despite feeling uneasy the entire time. My priority was simple, to keep my daughter close, even if everything else felt impossibly wrong. After that brunch, I came home with my mind racing and talked things over with my husband. I broached the nerve-wracking idea of inviting Tom and Ellie over for a family dinner. My husband was adamantly opposed, but I pleaded with him. We would lose all influence if we didn't try to stay involved, and I was terrified of pushing Ellie away for good. It took some convincing, but in the end, my husband begrudgingly agreed. We invited Ellie and Tom over for dinner that Saturday. Before that dinner, I confided in Holly, our oldest daughter and Ellie's sister, who is 23. I told her about Tom, and she was floored. Ellie had kept her completely in the dark. Holly wanted to know more and immediately jumped into social media detective mode, but Tom barely had a presence online. She insisted that she was coming to the dinner, too. I hesitated, worried that it might get messy, but finally relented. Saturday evening arrived with thick tension. Holly was relentless. She grilled Tom with question after question, far more aggressively than I ever had. She asked if younger girls were his type, or why a man his age was still hanging around at college parties, always layering in pointed remarks. Ellie kept begging her to stop, but I had to try to navigate the chaos as best as I could. My husband sat there, silent and brooding, visibly uncomfortable in Tom's presence. Then, suddenly, Tom and Ellie said they had some important news, a big announcement they wanted to share. Ellie, eyes bright and voice trembling, declared that they intended to move in together for the upcoming college year. I nearly choked on my drink right then and there. I knew Ellie had originally planned on living with college friends, so this was entirely new and alarming. I asked about her original plans, but before Ellie could answer, Tom jumped in. He explained that he probably wouldn't have another long-term relationship, that Ellie makes him happier than he's ever been, and he didn't want to waste any time with the woman I want to be my wife and the future mother of my children. That's when my husband snapped. He shouted for Tom to get out of our house. Tom stood up suddenly, indignant, and Ellie began to sob. I can't recall the last time my husband raised his voice like that. It seemed to shock even Ellie. Holly muttered that Tom had it coming and told Ellie to get away from the pedo freak. The night ended in chaos. Ellie left in tears with Tom. My husband stormed upstairs, and I just broke down, completely inconsolable. I've reached out to Ellie several times since that night, but she hasn't responded. The thought of her moving in with Tom fills me with dread. I can't shake the feeling that he's derailing her entire life. She's just 20, she doesn't need to get married and start a family with a man more than twice her age. She's never had a relationship before, and she seems so deeply infatuated that nothing I say is getting through. My husband has drawn his own hard line, insisting that if Ellie goes through with marrying Tom, he'll sever their relationship for good. I can't accept that. I will always love Ellie, no matter what, but it doesn't make the situation any less heartbreaking. Right now, there's just sadness everywhere I look. Update 3. About a year ago, my world turned upside down when my then 20-year-old daughter, Ellie, began dating a man more than twice her age, Tom, who was 44 at the time and is now 45. The entire situation has been a constant storm of emotions and worry, and looking back, I feel like I've spent the last year just holding my breath, waiting for something to change. Ellie had always been so lively, so bright, with a social life that made me smile. She used to fill the house with her laughter and the endless swirl of her friends. That seems like a distant memory now. She dropped out of college after finding out she was pregnant, and ended up moving in with Tom in the same college town. But her friends have all but disappeared. Most wanted nothing to do with her relationship with Tom, and now, she's more isolated than ever before. What really breaks my heart is how alone she's become, cut off from the life she could have had. I can see it every time I hear her tired voice on the phone, every time I visit her quiet apartment that feels hollow compared to the way she used to live. My husband, on the other hand, barely speaks to Ellie these days. They used to be so close, but Tom's presence has created this gulf that I don't know how to bridge. My younger daughter, Holly, is even more adamant. She can't bring herself to be part of Ellie's life as long as Tom is in the picture. The word she uses is predator, and nothing I say can ease her anger or disappointment. The family feels splintered without Ellie at the center, and it hurts every single day. Despite everything, I reach out to Ellie as often as I can. I love her, that hasn't changed. More than anything, I know that if things go wrong, if something falls apart, she will need someone to catch her. I need to be that person, even if it just means quietly waiting on the sidelines, hoping she'll be safe. Back in March, for a fleeting second, there was a glimmer of hope. Ellie called me, sobbing, after discovering that Tom had cheated on her. The details nearly shattered me. He'd had an affair with yet another college student, even younger than Ellie. My heart was racing. I thought maybe this would be the moment she saw things as they were, the wake-up call I'd prayed for. I tried to comfort her and gently encourage her to rethink everything, but after the initial heartbreak, Tom swept in with love bombing and promises. Then Ellie discovered the pregnancy, and that changed everything for her. She decided to stay. Now, the wedding is set for next summer. They said it would be easier that way, so they could focus on the baby first. The house is full of tension and empty chairs. My husband and Holly have already decided not to go, and most of my family is deeply uncomfortable about the whole thing. I still can't quite come to terms with it all, the engagement, the pregnancy, the isolation. My bright, joyful daughter is living a life I never wanted for her, and all I can do is hold on tight to the love I have for her. I wait, hoping that someday she'll realize she can come home, no matter what happens. Update 4. I never thought I'd be writing another one of these, but here I am, shaking as I type this. It's been 3 months since my last update, and everything I feared might happen has come crashing down in ways I never could have imagined. The baby, little Emma, was born in September. Despite everything, holding my granddaughter for the first time filled me with a love so fierce it took my breath away. She's beautiful, perfect little fingers, Tom's dark hair but Ellie's eyes. For a brief moment in that hospital room, I allowed myself to believe that maybe this would be the fresh start we all needed. But that hope was short-lived. Last Tuesday, I got a call from Ellie at 2 a.m. She was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her words. Between gasps, she managed to tell me that Tom hadn't come home in 2 days. She'd tried calling him repeatedly, but his phone went straight to voicemail. She was alone with Emma, terrified, and had no idea where he was. I drove over immediately. When I arrived at their apartment, Ellie looked like a ghost of herself, exhausted, still in the same clothes from days before, with Emma crying in her arms. The place was a mess, and I could see she hadn't been sleeping or eating properly. She kept saying she was sure something terrible had happened to him, that he would never just disappear like this. That's when I noticed Tom's laptop was still open on the kitchen counter. I shouldn't have looked, but something made me glance at the screen. What I saw made my blood run cold. Facebook messages. Dozens of them, all to different young women. College students, from what I could tell by their profile pictures. The conversations I could see were flirtatious, some explicitly sexual. But what made me feel sick was seeing messages dated just days after Emma's birth. Tom telling a 19-year-old sophomore that he was finally free and asking if she wanted to celebrate with him. I called Ellie over, my hands trembling. At first, she refused to believe it, insisting there had to be some explanation. But as we scrolled through more messages, the reality became undeniable. Tom had been actively pursuing other women throughout her entire pregnancy and even after Emma was born. The worst part came when we found messages from the same girl he'd cheated with in March, the one I'd hoped would be his wake-up call. They'd been meeting regularly for months. The most recent message, sent just 3 days ago, was Tom telling her he'd taken care of the baby situation and they could finally be together properly. Ellie collapsed into sobs that seemed to come from somewhere so deep and broken that I didn't know how to reach her. She kept repeating, "How could I have been so stupid?" over and over again. The next day, Tom finally showed up. He walked in like nothing had happened, carrying flowers and acting as if a 2-day disappearance was perfectly normal. When Ellie confronted him about the messages, he didn't even try to deny it. Instead, he got angry, accused her of violating his privacy, said she was being dramatic and clingy. He told her that having a baby had changed her, made her boring, and that he needed space to be himself. I watched my daughter's face crumble as this man, this predator who had stolen years of her life, casually destroyed what was left of her spirit. Then he had the audacity to say he wasn't ready to be tied down by responsibilities and that maybe they should take a break. Something inside me snapped. I told him exactly what I thought of him, called him every name I could think of, and demanded he leave. For once, Ellie didn't defend him. She just sat there, holding Emma, looking completely defeated. Tom packed a bag and left that afternoon. Before walking out, he told Ellie he'd be back for his things later, but that she shouldn't wait around for him. He hasn't been back since. It's been 5 days now. Ellie and Emma are staying with me temporarily while we figure out next steps. My husband, surprisingly, has been incredibly supportive. I think seeing Ellie so broken has reminded him that she's still our daughter, no matter what. Even Holly came by yesterday, and though things are still tense between the sisters, she held Emma, and told Ellie she loved her. The hardest part is watching Ellie grapple with the realization that everything I'd tried to warn her about was true. She keeps apologizing to me, saying she should have listened, that she wasted so much time. My heart breaks for her, but I also feel relief that she's finally seeing Tom for who he really is. We've contacted a lawyer about custody and child support. Tom hasn't responded to any legal notices yet, but frankly, I'm not sure he'll fight for any parental rights. Part of me hopes he just disappears completely. Ellie is talking about maybe going back to school eventually, once Emma is older. She's also been reaching out to some of her old friends, though many of those bridges were burned when she chose Tom over everyone else in her life. I don't know what comes next, but for the first time in over a year, I feel like I have my daughter back. She's hurt, she's lost, but she's here, and she's safe. Emma will grow up knowing her mother is strong enough to choose what's right, even when it's hard. The wedding, obviously, is off. Update 5. It's been 2 months since Tom walked out on Ellie and Emma, and I thought the worst was behind us. I was wrong. Last week, I was at the grocery store with Emma while Ellie had a job interview, her first step toward rebuilding her life. As I was loading groceries into the car, a young woman approached me in the parking lot. She looked nervous, maybe 19 or 20, with short blonde hair and anxious eyes. "Excuse me," she said hesitantly, "are you Sarah? Ellie's mom?" I was immediately on guard, but something about her demeanor made me pause. She introduced herself as Madison, and what she told me next made my stomach drop. She was the girl from Tom's messages, the one he'd been seeing during Ellie's pregnancy. Madison looked like she was about to cry. She said she'd been carrying guilt for months and needed to tell me something important. According to her, Tom had lied about everything. He wasn't just seeing her, there were at least 4 other girls she knew about, all college students. But that wasn't the worst part. She told me that Tom had been taking pictures and videos of these encounters without the girls' knowledge. Madison had only found out when she saw her own photo on his laptop during one of their meetings. When she confronted him, he threatened to post the images online if she ever said anything. She was terrified, but after hearing about Ellie and the baby, she couldn't stay silent anymore. My hands were shaking as I listened. This man had been in my home, around my granddaughter, and we had no idea how deep his depravity went. Madison gave me a USB drive, saying it contained screenshots of conversations and some evidence she'd managed to gather. She begged me to help stop him before he hurt anyone else, then quickly left before I could fully process what had happened. That evening, after Emma was asleep, I showed Ellie everything on the drive. The conversations were vile, Tom talking about his collection of young women, rating them, discussing which ones were most naive. There were messages to other older men, sharing stories and photos like some sick competition. Ellie threw up. Literally ran to the bathroom and was sick. When she came back, she just stared at the screen in horror. "I let him touch me," she whispered. "I let him touch our baby." But here's where it gets complicated, and terrifying. 2 days after Madison approached me, Ellie got a text from an unknown number. It was a photo of her from when she was pregnant, clearly taken without her knowledge, with a message, "Keep your mouth shut, or everyone sees everything." Tom knew we had evidence against him. Yesterday, things escalated. Ellie received a package at my house. We'd had her mail forwarded here temporarily. Inside was a disposable phone with a note, "Answer when I call." The phone rang immediately. It was Tom, but he sounded different, cold, calculating. He told Ellie he had insurance against any legal action she might consider. He claimed to have intimate photos and videos of her that he'd taken during their relationship, and threatened to post them online and send them to her potential employers, her old professors, her friends, anyone he could find. But then he made his real demand. He wanted to see Emma. Not out of paternal love, but as leverage. He said if Ellie gave him regular visitation rights and signed papers saying he was a good father, he'd keep her photos private. If she refused, he'd destroy her reputation and make sure she could never rebuild her life. Ellie was hyperventilating by the end of the call. The thought of Tom near Emma again made her physically ill, but she was also terrified of what he might do to her future if she refused. I immediately called the police, but they said without seeing the actual photos or threats in writing, it was hard to build a case. The detective we spoke with was sympathetic but explained that revenge porn cases are complicated, and Tom was being careful to make verbal threats only. That's when my husband surprised me. Mike, who had been quietly supportive since Tom left, suddenly became a man on a mission. He spent the entire next day making phone calls. Turns out, he has a friend from his military days who works in cybersecurity. Within 24 hours, they'd managed to trace some of Tom's online activities and found evidence of his collection that Madison had mentioned. But we also discovered something even more disturbing. Tom has been engaging in this behavior for years, not just with college students, but this seems to be a pattern spanning at least a decade. There are online forums where he's been active, communities of men sharing stories and photos of young women they've manipulated. As I write this, we're meeting with a federal investigator tomorrow. Apparently, Tom's actions involve multiple states and potentially illegal sharing of private images, making this a federal case. The strangest part? Despite everything, I catch Ellie sometimes staring at that disposable phone, like she's considering giving in to his demands. The manipulation runs so deep that even after seeing proof of his predatory behavior, part of her is still terrified of disappointing him or making him angry. Emma is thriving, thankfully. She started smiling and seems completely unaware of the chaos surrounding her birth. I find myself watching her sleep sometimes, amazed by her innocence and determined to protect it. The federal agent warned us that Tom might escalate before this is over. We've had the locks changed, installed security cameras, and Ellie carries a panic alarm I insisted on buying. But I can't shake the feeling that we're living in the calm before the storm. Tomorrow's meeting will determine whether we finally have enough to stop Tom permanently, or if we're about to enter an even more dangerous phase of this nightmare. Update 6. The federal meeting was supposed to bring us answers, but it only opened doors to a nightmare I never could have imagined. Agent Martinez listened carefully as we presented everything: Madison's evidence, the threatening calls, the online forums Mike had discovered. She took detailed notes and assured us they were building a strong case. But then she asked a question that made my blood freeze. Has Tom ever mentioned other family members, particularly anyone with young daughters? I didn't understand why she was asking until she explained that Tom's online activities had led them to investigate his extended network. What they found was a sophisticated operation involving multiple men who shared information about potential targets, young women they'd identify, groom, and exploit. The investigators had been tracking this group for months, but Tom was apparently one of their most prolific members. That's when Agent Martinez showed us a photo that made Ellie gasp out loud. It was Tom with another man, both of them at what looked like a college graduation party, surrounded by young women. The other man was Tom's cousin, Derek, who Ellie had met exactly once during their relationship. Tom had mentioned Derek lived across the country and worked with young people, but had been vague about the details. Derek teaches high school, Agent Martinez explained grimly. We arrested him yesterday for possession of inappropriate images of his students. His computer had extensive correspondence with Tom about recruitment strategies and target identification. I felt sick. This wasn't just about one predatory man, it was an entire network, and Tom was apparently teaching others his methods. 3 days after that meeting, everything changed again. I was feeding Emma when my phone rang. It was Holly, and she was crying so hard I could barely understand her. Mom, he found me. Tom found me. My heart stopped. Holly lived 2 states away, working as a marketing coordinator in Denver. She'd made it clear she wanted nothing to do with any of this situation, but somehow Tom had tracked her down. According to Holly, Tom had shown up at her apartment building that morning, claiming he just wanted to talk family to family about Emma. Her neighbor had let him into the building, thinking he was a relative. When Holly refused to open her door, Tom started shouting through it that he knew she'd been helping us gather evidence against him, and that she was going to regret interfering in his family. But here's the terrifying part: Tom knew things about Holly's life that he shouldn't have known. He mentioned her boyfriend's name, her work schedule, even the fact that she'd recently applied for a promotion. He'd been watching her, gathering information. He kept saying I reminded him of Ellie at my age. Holly sobbed. Mom, the way he was looking at me through the peephole. I've never felt so scared. I immediately called Agent Martinez, who dispatched local agents to Holly's apartment. By the time they arrived, Tom was gone, but they found evidence he'd been surveilling her building for days: cigarette butts from his brand in the stairwell, scratches around her mailbox lock. That same evening, as we were trying to process Holly's terrifying encounter, Ellie received another call on the disposable phone. This time, Tom's voice was different, more manic, desperate. You turned them against me, he accused. The feds came to my hotel. They took my computers, my phones, everything. You destroyed my life. Ellie tried to stay calm, but her voice was shaking. Tom, you did this to yourself. Just leave us alone. That's when he said something that still haunts me: if I'm going down, I'm taking everyone with me. Starting with that pretty sister of yours in Denver. The line went dead. Within an hour, federal agents were at our door, explaining that Tom had violated his bail conditions by contacting us and traveling across state lines. There was now a federal warrant for his arrest, but he disappeared. His hotel room was empty, his car abandoned at a bus station. Holly moved back home temporarily, sleeping in our guest room while the investigation continued. Having both my daughters under the same roof should have felt comforting, but instead, the house felt like a fortress under siege. We installed additional security cameras, changed our phone numbers, and I found myself checking on Emma obsessively, terrified that Tom might somehow get to her. 2 weeks into this new normal, Holly made a discovery that changed everything again. She'd been going through her old college photos, trying to remember if she'd ever seen Tom around campus, when she found something that made her call me immediately. Mom, you need to see this, she said, showing me her laptop. It was a group photo from a college party she'd attended 3 years ago, long before Tom had even met Ellie. In the background, barely visible but unmistakable, was Tom talking to a group of young women. He was there, Holly whispered. He was at my college, years before he met Ellie. What if meeting Ellie wasn't random? What if he'd been watching our family all along? The implications made me nauseous. Had Tom deliberately targeted our family? Had he somehow researched us, learned about our daughters, and strategically approached Ellie? Yesterday, Agent Martinez called with an update that confirmed our worst fears. Tom's arrest had led to the discovery of detailed files on dozens of young women, including comprehensive background information on their families. Ellie's file was thick: photos, social media screenshots, even information about Mike's work schedule and my daily routines. But Holly's file was even thicker, dating back 4 years. Tom had been watching both of our daughters, collecting information, planning. Ellie hadn't been a random target, she'd been selected, studied, and deliberately pursued. We believe Tom may have initially targeted Holly, Agent Martinez explained. But when she graduated and moved away, he shifted focus to Ellie. The pregnancy wasn't an accident in his mind, it was part of a long-term strategy to embed himself in your family permanently. As I'm writing this, Tom is still at large. There have been reported sightings in 3 different states, but nothing confirmed. Every shadow outside makes me jump. Every car that drives by too slowly makes my heart race. Ellie has been amazing through all of this. Discovering that her entire relationship was based on calculated predation should have destroyed her, but instead, it seems to have awakened something fierce in her. She's been working with investigators, helping them understand Tom's methods and identify other potential victims. Emma is 5 months old now, and she has no idea that her father is a monster being hunted by federal agents. Sometimes I watch her laugh at silly faces or reach for colorful toys, and I'm grateful for her innocent joy in the middle of all this darkness. Holly starts therapy next week. She's been having nightmares about Tom showing up at her apartment, and she's struggling with the knowledge that he'd been watching her for years without her knowing. But yesterday, something unexpected happened. Madison, the young woman who first approached me in the grocery store parking lot, called. She'd heard about Tom's disappearance and wanted to help. Apparently, she'd been in contact with other victims, and together they'd formed a support group of sorts. There are 7 of us that we know of, she told me. Maybe more. We're all willing to testify when they catch him. He's not going to hurt anyone else. For the first time in weeks, I felt something like hope. Tom may be hiding, but he's not invisible. Eventually, they'll find him, and when they do, there will be an army of brave young women ready to ensure he can never hurt anyone again. I just pray it happens before he decides to make good on his threats.